Happy to do that, Amber. Thank you. Are you ready?
You are all set.
Great. Well, thank you everybody for joining us today. My name is Julie Evans. I'm the CEO of Project Tomorrow. And I'm very happy to do this special webinar for New Hampshire, our good friends in New Hampshire, to give you information about how to participate in Speak Up this year. So I want to first start off by thanking our good friend Stan Frieda from the New Hampshire Department of Education, who I know is here with us, for all of his support of Speak Up and suggesting to us that we do this. And so we are happy to do that. I also want to recognize Stan as being this year's Leader of the Year from the State Ed Tech Directors Association. So we are thrilled to have that opportunity to again recognize our good friend Stan. And thank you again, Stan, for all of your support. So what we're going to do today is I'm going to give you some information kind of along two different areas, but as Amber said, we're going to leave plenty of time for your questions, your comments, ideas that you might have, things that you need to know about. So we're going to give you information about what is Speak Up, what do you need to know to get started to participate, who should you contact, but then setting that within the context of providing you with some examples from the 2016 data. So I selected some very specific 2016 data to share with you to give you some context for the type of data that you could be receiving from your district stakeholders as well. And then we'll also give you some suggestions of different ways that we can help you. So both in terms of what do you need to get started, but then ways in which we can help you as well. So I'll start off by telling you a little bit about Project Tomorrow. Project Tomorrow is an education nonprofit organization. We've been working exclusively within K-12 education since 1996. So actually our roots go back to the very beginning days when we were getting schools wired for the internet. We're particularly focused in on making sure that today's students are well prepared for the future. And we have a particular organizational bias where we believe that the very best way for students to be prepared for college and career success is through leveraging STEAM resources. That includes the use of digital tools, content, and different types of solutions within K-12 education. Now, we're probably best well known for our Speak Up research project on digital learning, which I'll now give you some information about that. So Speak Up is an annual research project that we've conducted since 2003. Here's what we do, folks. We design and launch a series of online surveys that are appropriate for K-12 students, teachers, parents, administrators at all levels, and community members. So we do all the heavy lifting in terms of designing the surveys, making sure the questions are appropriate, making sure the reading levels are appropriate, and then we make those surveys available to any K-12 school or district that wants to use those surveys as a means for collecting feedback from your stakeholders. So we do all, as I said, we do all the heavy lifting, we do the back-end processing for you, but we are 100% facilitated through schools and districts. So we'll get into a little bit more here in a moment about how you start the process with Speak Up. But know that, once again, we don't have a random student or teacher that takes the survey. Everything is facilitated through schools and districts. And we view this as part of our nonprofit mission, a free service that we offer to schools and districts, so that you don't have to develop a survey yourself to collect feedback from your stakeholders, nor do you have to use your precious instructional dollars to pay a company to do that for you. We actually do that process for you as a no-fee service. So we've been doing this, as I said, since 2003, and since that time we've had about 5 million Speak Up surveys that have been submitted through Project Tomorrow, making Speak Up the largest collection of authentic feedback from K-12 stakeholders on their views and values regarding digital learning. So the way it works is that we actually already have information about all the schools and districts in the country in our database. We use the U.S. Department of Education's back-end database, the NCES database, download that into our system. So in many ways, your schools and districts are already registered with us, but we do ask districts to give us a personal contact, someone that can be our contact person within the district, so that we can then send to that person information about the surveys, information about different deadlines or promotions that we're running, information about the number of surveys that have been submitted from your schools and districts. And then also, since we give back to every participating school and district your own locally collected data with state and national data to use for benchmarks, that contact person is the person that gets the information about that online report that we will send to you. We take the national data and share it every year through white papers and infographics, and it's used regularly by policymakers as well as different research organizations and all the education associations to inform their work. But first and foremost, our primary mission-driven objective here is to help schools and districts more effectively and efficiently learn about the views of their stakeholders. And so Speak Up is all about helping schools and districts develop capacity to better leverage that data from their stakeholders. So we keep very good company. Here is a busy slide with some of the logos and names of our champion outreach partners. I'm sure many of these different organizations might be familiar to you. We are very pleased and honored to be partners with all of these fabulous organizations, and they help us in terms of promoting out to schools and districts the Speak Up opportunity. So the types of questions that are on Speak Up cover basically around the use of technology to support teaching and learning, as you would expect. We do ask different questions of different audiences. So we ask teachers every year about their wish list for professional development. That happens to be a favorite question of many districts that want to get that authentic feedback from their teachers about what they really feel that they need. We ask administrators about their challenges, what wakes them up in the middle of the night. We ask parents about internet safety. I actually brought some of that data to share with you. We ask all the respondents, including the students, to talk to us about how they are using different types of digital tools to support learning both in school and out of school. This year we added on 4 additional themes, very specific themes for the 2017 surveys. And it was really based on feedback that we had gotten from schools and districts about what their interest areas were. In many cases, we were already asking these questions on the Speak Up survey, but they wanted us to do a broader set of questions. So that includes digital citizenship. I'm going to share with you some of the questions that we're asking about digital citizenship this year, about cloud computing, about the impact of cloud computing in schools and districts. We are asking a really interesting set of questions this year about math attitudes. Why does math matter? Why is math proficiency important? And what do the stakeholders think is the very best way for students to become proficient in math? Every year we do a different curricular focus. In years past, we focused on science, we focused on writing, we have focused on reading comprehension, we focused on math in the past. This is a new set of questions around math attitudes. And then we're also very interested this year in how teachers in particular are using data derived from digital tools to change their practice and to personalize learning. So those are the new themes for this year, but please know that the topics that we cover are very broad, but also really meaningful in terms of the type of data that will yield for you. Now, what we like to say is that our survey questions are unique than some other types of surveys that are out there because we cover 3 very specific vectors or areas. We ask stakeholders how they're using technology, so we collect information about their activities using technology for learning. But we don't stop there. We also have questions on the surveys about people's attitudes and their aspirations. So how do students, parents, teachers value digital learning experiences? And also, how would they like to use technology more effectively for learning? We happen to believe that it's the triangulation of activities, attitudes, and aspirations that can really give a school leader or district leader a more complete picture as to how you can leverage technology most effectively in your school and district visions. That any one of those are interesting sets of data, but in terms of making the data actionable and really turning or translating that data into what we call actionable knowledge requires the opportunity to look at all three of these vectors across different stakeholder audiences, to compare those different, stakeholder audiences, and then also to look at the changes over time. So we know from our work, and again, we've been involved with K-12 education since 1996, that sometimes, probably not the case in New Hampshire, but sometimes what happens with school and district planning, particularly around the use of technology, is that we hang on to assumptions. So we may have believed something was true 5 years ago, and we hang on to that assumption and build our plans or build our projections around some of those assumptions that may no longer be current or relevant. Sometimes we'll hear from people that they also may use some anecdotal information. So they talk to one teacher or two teachers, or they heard from a couple of parents, or they know that students in this class, that this would be valuable for them. And so they are building plans and making decisions based on anecdotes or very small bits of information. We happen to believe at Project Tomorrow that there's a better way for you to stimulate new discussions amongst your stakeholders and a better way to make decisions around digital learning plans, and that's through the use of the Speak Up data. Again, we will give back to you all of your participant data, every single question, every single response, and also include for you the state level data, so New Hampshire level data, as well as national data to use for benchmarks. So you have the opportunity to do some comparative analysis and not have to rely upon maybe out-of-date assumptions or anecdotes to inform your decision-making. So as I said, I'm going to share with you just a couple little data bits from the surveys from last fall. So in Speak Up 2016, we had about 514,000 respondents that completed surveys nationwide. Those respondents were broken down into these audiences: K-12 students, teachers and librarians, parents, administrators, both school site and district level, as well as community members. And so you can see the numbers here in terms of the number of respondents. We also always look at the number of districts that participate with us and the number of schools. So you can see it was about 2,400 districts nationwide, about 7,000 schools. And the breakdown was a little bit skewed last year to rural and suburban, but we still had over a quarter of schools that were urban schools. We disaggregate our data many, many different ways to validate the data and to look for statistical significance. And disaggregating the data by the type of community, urban, rural, or suburban, or if it's a Title I school, if it's a majority minority school, private school versus public school, charter school versus magnet school, whatever it might be, we do all that disaggregation as part of our testing. So I probably should mention that Speak Up 2017 is currently open. You may already know that. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a couple of minutes. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to share with you some data from last fall, just to give you a little bit of a glimpse into the types of data that you could expect to get if you have your stakeholders complete a Speak Up survey this fall. And all of the questions that I'm sharing with you are questions that we asked last year in 2016, and we're asking again in 2017. So this is a favorite question of tech leaders. Quite often technology leaders at both the school and district level want to know what the student perception is of the technology that's being provided to their students. So we ask students kind of what bugs you, what are the barriers or obstacles you face using technology at school. So here is what high school students last year told us were the primary obstacles, or the top 5 obstacles that they face using technology at your school. Now again, this is national data. We understand that school data, district data, even state data may be different, but I wanted to give you the perspective at the national level. So this is very interesting because when we look and do a comparative look over time, we see a couple interesting things pop up here. So last fall, high school students told us their number one thing that bugged them about using technology at school was that the internet was too slow. Now, interestingly, just 5 years previously, only a third of students told us that that was a concern point or a disappointment area for them. And now last year, it was 60%. Now, I think we would probably all agree that we probably have faster speed internet today than we had in 2011. But what the students are talking about here is contention for that access. So as more folks are using that internet connection, that bandwidth in their schools and districts, we're seeing that the end result for the students is that they feel that the internet is too slow. Now, the other one that was interesting here to us is that number 4 on the high school student list was I can't use my own mobile device or my social media tools. A little bit over 1/3 of the high school students nationwide said that was a major obstacle for them. Now, interestingly, in 2011, 50% of high school students said that. So this obviously reflects the fact that there are new policies in place in many high schools that allow students to use their own mobile devices and maybe even access their social media tools. Or maybe the students are savvy enough that they are getting around school filters and firewalls to access those tools. That might very well be the case as well. Now, the one that did not change over the 5 years is where the students identified for us that they still feel that there are way too many rules that prohibit their use of technology to support learning. Now, we also asked students about their use of mobile devices. Lots of districts have implemented different types of mobile devices. So we thought it was valuable to have an opportunity to do a deeper dive on that. So for the last couple of years, we've had a pretty deep series of questions about mobile learning, mobile devices, what access you have. So I did bring some of that data since we hear from districts that that's pretty valuable for them. This happens to be a favorite question of many school and district leaders. And this is where we ask students, and we're asking this question again this year, so this is the type of data that you would be able to get from your stakeholders. We ask them, what types of mobile devices do you have for your own use, not school provided? So this is provided by mom, by dad, grandma for a birthday, or maybe the student acquired the device themselves. So we ask about a range of different mobile devices. We pulled here for you smartphones, tablets, laptops, and digital readers, and divided them up by the grade bands. So kindergarten, first, and second graders, upper elementary students, middle school students, and high school students. So a couple things from an interpretational standpoint here. We see that with 90% of high school students saying that they have a personal smartphone, we can assume that these students have internet capability or access whenever they want it through that particular smartphone. Middle school students are catching up as well. 77% of them said last fall that they had a smartphone. And some folks are often surprised by the high numbers amongst elementary students as well. Again, this is national data. Your own particular community obviously might be different. The other thing that we think is significant here that we've been hearing from the students is that they don't have just one of these. So they don't choose a tablet versus a laptop or a smartphone versus a digital reader. In many cases, the students have multiple mobile devices, and they are differentiating the work that they are doing on these mobile devices based on the features and functionality of those devices. Now, we also ask students to talk to us about what type of access they have in school to mobile devices. In particular, has their school assigned a device to them? So is there a one-to-one program in place, and what that access looks like? So here's again the nationally aggregated data for laptops, tablets, and Chromebooks. So a couple things you can see here. In terms of laptops, that tends to be more of a high school type solution. We see much fewer tablets in high school than we see in elementary school and even middle school. And then, of course, we see the huge increases or ongoing increases in Chromebooks nationwide. Now, again, in your particular community, these numbers might be different. The other thing that was interesting to us is that we are now over a majority of students in high school say that, in fact, they're using their own mobile device at school. That might be in addition to a one-to-one assigned device, or it might be the only device that they have. Now, we asked students for several years, we asked them about what they wanted to do with mobile devices to support their learning. But with so many students now having access, either through their own device or through school-provided devices, we flipped the question and said, well, what are you doing with mobile devices to support learning in the classroom? And basically, folks, their responses, the activities that came back from students fall into two buckets. One are the types of things that are teacher-directed, sponsored, teacher-facilitated. So, for example, taking an online test. That's something that the teacher has to facilitate to make that possible for the students. What I'm actually, as a researcher, more interested in many cases, is where students are leveraging the features and functionality of these devices to self-direct activities, to be able to come up with ways to support their learning that are not teacher explicitly directed, but more spontaneous or organic from the students themselves. So that's where the students are using these devices to take notes or to receive reminders or to identify videos that they can watch to support their learning. So a little bit of what you see here is the Khan Academy effect, for example. Now, we also asked teachers as well as parents and administrators, so what are the benefits of mobile devices within learning? And so this is a really interesting set of data. And again, as I mentioned, we do a lot of disaggregation of data to look at different trend lines and to better understand the environment. And one of the things that we do is that we look at the teacher population based upon what their assignment is, knowing that in some cases the teaching environment in a high school might be very different than a teaching environment in an elementary school. And this applies also to the use of mobile devices. And so we do see differences here. In fact, we see that in terms of a benefit of using a laptop or a tablet or a Chromebook, it's really the elementary teachers that are seeing the increased engagement in their students, at least to a higher degree than high school students, high school teachers are. On the other side, though, we see that this conversation around preparing students for the work environment, preparing students for college success, is something that resonates more with secondary level teachers, but also increasingly with upper elementary teachers as well. So it's interesting to take a look at that sort of disaggregation around the benefits of using mobile devices. And then just to close out this little sub-segment I did here for you on mobile, we also asked school principals. So one, what type of mobile learning models have you implemented in your school? And then secondarily, are you seeing positive impacts from that implementation? And so again, this is from school principals, another stakeholder that you might be interested in bringing their thoughts into this conversation. So I pulled out here for you 4 different mobile learning models: students using their own devices, schools assigning a device, but only for in-school usage, opportunities for students to take that school-assigned device home, or do the students just have periodic access at school? And for that, we're thinking about a cart that comes into the classroom that the teacher signs out, or maybe the students are still using a multimedia center or the library for their computer access. So we see obviously that periodic access is the one that is implemented most often, according to principals. 70% of principals said that that's their implementation. though 52% told us that they are also in an environment where they're assigning devices for in-school usage. In terms of seeing the positive impact, we also see that those two, school-assigned devices where in-school usage is the only modality, or periodic access, is where the principals are seeing the biggest positive impact at this point. So let's bring parents into this conversation. We often, or at least I often, will talk to school and district leaders and tell them I think one of the very special opportunities within participation for Speak Up is the opportunity to poll your parents and to use an online survey to do that. So often in schools and districts, leaders only hear from, shall we say, the squeaky wheel parent, or the parent that has the opportunity to be at school a lot or to be very involved with their child's school or their child's teacher. One of the great values, I think, associated with Speak Up is that you get the opportunity to equalize that playing field in terms of stakeholder input. And in many cases, we find that parents tell us that even if they do not have access at home to the internet, they may be completing their Speak Up survey at work. Other schools and districts have made accommodations for parents in terms of having maybe a kiosk in the front office where parents can take the Speak Up survey, or facilitating a group level survey. We facilitate that for you at a parent support meeting or a booster club meeting or something like that. But let me share with you some really interesting data that we collected last year. And actually, we've been collecting this data over time. We asked parents, so what concerns you about your child's use of the internet and online tools? And here, folks, are the top 8 responses that came from parents last year nationwide. Remember, we had about 28,000 parents that participated in Speak Up last year. So these may be very similar to the types of things that parents in your community might say, or because of programs and policies that you have put in place, you may see different types of concerns come up. So for example, if you have had a very aggressive program, for example, about student safety online, or possibly an anti-cyberbullying campaign, that may not come up at the same level as what you see here. However, remember again, we give you not only your local data, but also the state and national data, and then you have the opportunity to see, in many ways, the value or the impact of some of the programs or policies that you put in place. Now, talking about digital citizenship, and I told you that was one of our theme areas for this year. Because of the response of that data last year, and based on input that we got from school and district leaders all across the country, we did a very deep dive this year on the new surveys around digital citizenship questions. And that included gaining insights not only from parents, but also from students and from educators. So here's a range, sort of the general themes, the research questions, let's say, that are facilitated through the new Speak Up surveys. These aren't the actual ways the questions are asked, but really give you more of the theme associated with it. So we're really very interested in what types of digital citizenship skills are being taught at school, the proficiency in terms of that teaching modality, who has influenced what students say they know about being a good digital citizen, and then also who has responsibility for teaching digital citizenship at your school. So a really interesting new set of data. I don't know of anyone else that has asked these types of questions or has the opportunity to be able to hear from all of these different stakeholders and once again be able to give you that comparative data. So let me give you just finally a little bit of data from our teacher survey. Again, for many districts, this is a really powerful tool to hear from their teachers. And every year we hear from school and district leaders that they so very much value our teacher survey because they feel not only are we asking the right questions to help them inform their plans and their decisions, but they also feel that their teachers are more candid and honest on the Speak Up survey than they would be if the school or district facilitated a survey. So please keep in mind, as very obviously, we are not a school or district. We're not the state Department of Education. We're not a vendor trying to sell something. We're not even an association or a policy house that has a particular bent or agenda. And so we take very seriously our responsibility as that authentic guardian of this data, and really look at it as a responsibility that we have to help you get the very best data to inform your plans. So this is a question that we ask teachers every year. What types of digital content are you using in your classroom? And again, we did the disaggregation here based on the assignment of the teachers. We also look at this across years of experience of the teacher. We look at it across community type. We look at it based on what the mobile learning environment is in the school. So do the students in the class have access to mobile devices? And thus, is the teacher using different types of digital content in that environment? Has the teacher implemented a flipped learning environment that then impacts what types of digital content they're using? So we see some really interesting trend lines here, particularly over time. So no surprise, I'm sure, to any of you, but a huge growth over the last couple of years in the use of videos in the classroom and also game-based learning environments. And so we're continuing to watch both of those trend lines as well. The other thing that we do is that we ask teachers, so what do you need to be able to use technology more effectively? Now, the top needs that teachers shared with us in 2016 are here on the left-hand side. Teachers want more professional development. They want the opportunity to have planning time with colleagues. They feel it's essential that there are devices for student use, that they have access to those devices, whether on a checkout process or student assigned. And then they also want just-in-time technology support. Now, those numbers all came up very high. A majority of teachers told us that that was their top identified need. The other side, the right-hand side, I think is really interesting because we only saw less than a quarter of teachers who told us these were the type of needs that they have. Now, we look at this as an evolution. So once the teachers feel that we have satisfied the needs on the left-hand side, then they're going to start thinking about the needs on the right-hand side. So we're paying a very close attention and watching that particular trend line, as we believe it speaks to a greater sophistication of the teacher when we start seeing higher levels of teachers, for example, that say that they're looking for rubrics for evaluating digital content, or info on classroom management strategies, or coaching on lesson plan delivery. So let me switch gears here a little bit before we get into your questions. I want to give you just a couple of the sort of the background information about Speak Up, how to participate, some of the things that you're going to want to know. This is a copy of our Speak Up homepage. So you can see here across the toolbar at the top, lots of different ways for you to gain more information about Speak Up, even beyond what we shared with you today. So information about how to get involved, there's FAQs there, there's information about our top participating schools, there's a blog that you might want to check into. We have lesson plans here for teachers, we have startup kits for superintendents and technology leaders, lots of information that's available here. And the URL is tomorrow.org/speakup. Now, a couple steps to get started. I mentioned before that we already have your schools and districts registered, quote unquote, in our database. So identifying a district contact person activates that registration for you. We then highly recommend that you make a strategic decision about what audiences you want to poll. So which of the Speak Up surveys do you want to tap into to learn about the views of your stakeholders? Now, again, we provide surveys for K-12 students. They are grade level and reading level appropriate. We have surveys for parents, teachers, librarians, school site administrators, district administrators, technology leaders, communications officers, and also community members. Now, there is nothing that says you have to participate and speak up and promote the survey to all of your audiences. In fact, I quite often will counsel schools and districts, think about what your goals are. So do you have a new program that you either have launched or you're going to launch, that getting feedback from that audience would be important for you? Do you have a particular concern point about some of your technology plans and a goal to revise those plans, and thus you want to have stakeholder feedback to inform those plans? So think about this strategically and then identify which audiences you want to poll. So we have districts that poll their teachers and their students every year, but poll parents every other year, or the flip. Some people do poll across their entire district because they want all that data. Some people select particular schools to participate and speak up, particularly in their first year. Now, we help you by providing you with all different types of promotional materials. You can use them just as they are, or you can customize them. So those could include a newsletter, little blurbs, they can links that you can put on your website, information, email, text that you can send out to stakeholders, all sorts of different types of information. So check out our promotional materials. Once you've done all of that, then what you want to do is promote the survey link to your audiences. Your audiences will come to this particular page, speakup.tomorrow.org, and they will have an opportunity to choose whether they are a parent, a student, a teacher, a principal, a community member. From that, then they are entered into the survey that is most appropriate for them. We do not have a password on the adult surveys, but we do on the student survey. And again, your district contact can choose what that password is. Most places will take something that's familiar to their community, such as a school mascot. Now, I mentioned before that we have a fabulous FAQ. There's a lot more questions and answers that are there as well. So here, going back to that homepage for Speak Up, you can see here under that Get Involved tab, there's the FAQs, there's participation tutorials, the promotional materials are there. If you want to view the surveys before you send them out to your stakeholders, you can take a look at that as well as our fabulous participation map where you can see where folks are taking the Speak Up surveys all across the country. In fact, all across the world, because we have participation globally. Now, I want to introduce you to Jenny Hossert, who is our Speak Up Operations Manager. Jenny works directly with school and district contact folks to help you through every step of the process with Speak Up. So she is very intimately involved with all aspects of Speak Up and can do some special customization for you if that's helpful from a promotional standpoint. Once again, you'll get a copy of this, but there's Jenny's email address and also her phone. Please feel free to contact her. Now, the Speak Up surveys are open now until January 19th. We're going to be giving back to you your local data with the state and national data the first week in February. And then we're going to start releasing our national data later on in the spring. The important thing is that you still have plenty of time to participate in Speak Up here. That's why we keep the surveys open after the winter break. And also, secondarily, because of the way we set up the database, you'll have your data back just within 2 weeks of the close of the survey. So as you're doing your planning for next year, as you're thinking about professional development for next year, thinking about different new initiatives, you'll have that stakeholder data to inform your plans. Here's a little bit about what your district reports will look like. Once again, it's every question, and you will see what your responses are. That's the percentage of response column, what the state percentage of response was, and also the national. Now, folks, at the district level, we give you both district aggregated data as well as school by school comparative data as well. So then the other thing that I want to talk about before we open it up for questions, and we may already have some questions that are out there, is that there's also some very special things that we can do on the back end to help you make meaning of your Speak Up data. Whether that's to do a special webinar like this to look at your particular data, help you with the creation of some infographics that mirror our national infographics, or actually providing you with a PowerPoint template that you can just feed your data directly into, and then many folks use that for presentations to their district cabinet or to school boards or to community groups. So lots of different things that we can do for you on the back end as well. So as I said, my goal today was to introduce you to Speak Up, to use some of last year's data to give you examples of the types of data that might be valuable for you. And now what we're going to do is pause for a moment and see if you have some questions. Once again, there are opportunities to ask in the Q&A box, as Amber pointed out before, some questions that you might have, or emailing Amber, or even having the opportunity, Amber might be able to open up the mic for you so that we can hear your questions directly. So I'm open for questions. Go ahead, folks.
So Julie, one question has popped up about the access to data. Who else gets the data?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm sorry, I should have answered that. So when you sign up as a district contact with us, you are our primary person for providing that data report. We believe very strongly that we are merely the guardian, the facilitator of the data acquisition process, but that the data is owned by you. So from time to time, folks, I'll be really honest and candid with you. We will get a community member or even a school board member who will call us and say, I want the Speak Up data from XYZ district or ABC school. We will always refer them back to you. It is your discretion as to what data you want to share with your stakeholders, if any, what you want to do with that data, how you want to process that data, and how you want to present it to your community. So we look at that relationship with that district contact person as our conduit, not only to share information with you, but also to give that data to you, and then it's your discretion as to how you want to share it. We do not share your data, including your name of your school or district or your contact name, with anyone. We consider that sacred data that we are protecting for you.
Question, are there sample questions available to share with administrators for survey buy-in?
Absolutely. So if we go back, I think I can go back here, Amber. Let me go back and see if I can share exactly where that is. I don't know if I can go back on this for some reason. Anyway, oh, I can. Okay, great. Let me show you. Really simple and easy. So right here underneath on our Speak Up page, homepage, where it says View Surveys. So those are the actual surveys that are available right now in Speak Up 2017. So you can take a look at those. Also, under the participation tutorial, I believe, as well as the promotional materials, there are also some shorter kind of sample questions associated with that. But if you want to look at the full surveys, just click right underneath that Get Involved, and you can actually see what the survey questions are. Now, the surveys take about 15 to 20 minutes to complete. Sometimes it might take some people a little bit longer. Sometimes it might take some folks a little bit less. But they are designed and tested to take about 15 to 20 minutes. So there are plenty of opportunities for folks to do that, particularly if it's teachers in a staff meeting after school, or as I mentioned, in a parent group meeting. Quite often, folks will have students complete the surveys during the school day as part of a special initiative that they have within the school.
I loved one of my favorite ones I heard the other day was one of the administrators talking about taking iPads out to the drop-off line outside of school, or the pickup line, I guess it was, so that parents could take it right there.
That's interesting. I hadn't heard that one, Amber. That's great. You know, I think that the idea of having parents fill it out in the office where they've set up a kiosk, you know, as you're waiting to pick up your child or bringing lunch that the child left at home was also really creative. But the taking advantage of the long wait in the drop-off line is another interesting idea.
So that's all the questions I have submitted, unless anybody has anything else.
Well, folks, we would love to have your participation and speak up this year. And again, if you think of a question after we close out this webinar today, no worries. Please contact us. So here's my contact information. Oh, I'm sorry. This says North Carolina. So sorry. It should say New Hampshire. We also did one for North Carolina last week, so my apologies. But my contact information is right here. Please contact us. Or Amber also provided her contact information. She's ataylor@tomorrow.org. We are happy to work with you. And again, I provide you with Jenny's contact info as well. So look forward to your participation. Please let us know how we can help you.